Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out fullpresscoverage.com for all sorts of great sports podcasts and, wrestling podcasts too, if you consider that a sport. I know WrestleMania was last night, so a lot of people excited about their WrestleMania content. You can get that there too. You can also find great articles, some by John Sapichetti, my co-host. And maybe eventually I'll be convinced to write an article too once I calm down about the Celtics season. But the biggest news of the day isn't basketball related. It's set related, as John Sapichetti has added a beautiful, what I can only call a tapestry behind him. So congratulations on I can't even call it really. I don't know what to call it, Sap. It's a piece of art. It's really quite an acquisition you've made.
It's very simplistic. We didn't go with the Jackson Pollock method of where you just have a lot of different colors splattered on the canvas. We just went with one color, and I'm going to tell you what this is behind me. I'm at Market Basket yesterday shopping, and I see a paper tablecloth that's lined with plastic. Oh. That's what this is. So I bought it, $2.99, folded it, and I've got it hanging behind me. Now, I think I need another one so I have more consistency. I'm not even sure what color this is. I thought it was purple, so have that Lakers tone to when you see my lovely face on our podcast. But it's more blue. In fact, I put it out to Twitter, and everybody's telling me it's blue. So I'm somewhat pleased with it. But with the basic color behind me and then the red shirt, it gives kind of a Dick Tracy feel to my look. So that's going to be pretty interesting. I wish I was Warren Beatty. He's had more fun in some weekends than I've had my entire life. But that's another story for another day.
So you're saying you're not just blind, you are also colorblind.
No, I'm not colorblind, but sometimes purples and blues can kind of look similar. I think this is kind of a purplish blue. Now, of course,
you're selectively colorblind.
Well, it depends, right? If I want something to be purple, it's going to be purple. But the thing is that obviously my iPhone does a really good job with pictures, but it doesn't quite have the perfect detail that you have when you're in person. And since I'm the only person that sees this, I'm going with purple, even though everybody on Twitter is saying it's blue.
Yeah, well, I think it looks fantastic. It really classes up the joint. Like I said, it's similar to some tapestries you'd see probably hanging in the Vatican, is my guess. I've been there, and I know for a fact they prize their tapestries, and you could probably swap that one out. They wouldn't even know the difference.
There's the Mona Lisa, there's the Sistine Chapel, and there's me in Winthrop with my background. It's kind of got a little of a Kendrick Perkins feel, because when Perk does his hits, it seems like he's either in a coffin, a chariot, or in front of his drapes somewhere. So I kind of like that, because I don't want to go like everyone else with pictures and fake books and helmets,
ouch.
When we're talking about that. No, you look fantastic. I also have a very limited amount of space here. So I'm kind of working with a small set and a very small budget. I don't even have my stand yet. A very good friend of mine bought me a stand, cell phone stand for Christmas. And here it is in April. I still haven't received it because of the pandemic. Haven't seen each other. I've got clothes for her two sons, which they're going to probably be outgrown from by the time they get them. But once I get the stand, there'll be a little more consistency in my angle as you see me. But in the meantime, we put, 12 packs of Poland Spring water on top of each other with like a plastic container and a spray bottle with the camera in front. I shouldn't be giving away all my secrets, because I am, as you said, tricks of the trade. I mean, I'm MacGyver, as you said, so we do the best we can.
I will say this, though. The difference between what you have going on and what Kendrick Perkins has going on, I would venture to guess he spent a lot more than $2.99 on whatever those, sets are.
The drapes. Yeah, those are nice drapes that Perk has on. And Perk actually, when he's in Texas tweeting and doing his hits with NBC Sports Boston or ESPN, he's actually motivating players. And maybe that's something we're going to discuss. See, that's exactly called a professional segue, Jet. Sorry to step on your toes. You're the host of the show. But, sometimes the openings are very easy because Perk, I think, gets credit for the Celtics winning their last 3 games.
Believe me, if you have a better segue than I do, by all means, I don't care. It's not stepping
It's
on my
team effort.
toes. You're the co-host. You're not the sub-host. You're the co-host of the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And, I do appreciate you not only going to Market Basket, but thinking about the show while you're at Market Basket. You're always on, grocery shopping doesn't matter. You're always on.
No, I have a little bit of Kramer in me. When I need something or I'm trying to resolve a problem, I get kind of obsessed. So this mission is not over yet, Jet. There'll be more trips this week to a Walgreens or somewhere else to try to rectify this issue, but we'll get it done.
I would say like a Party City, maybe. You could
That's the place I got to go.
Halloween zone, Halloween town, something like that. Maybe one of those.
Yeah,
they pop up every 6 months. There's a Halloween store in everybody's town somehow.
They're open for September and October, and then it turns into a Thanksgiving town, then turns into a Christmas town, which turns into Valentine's Day. So I can kind of recreate sets here, which will be pretty interesting.
Based on the holidays. Yeah, I think that's great. But
people change flags, don't they, outside their house?
There is a house right down the street from me who changes their flag seemingly every week based on holidays I didn't even know existed. They got an Arbor Day flag. They got a flag for everything. I think when they bought the house, they came with, it's got to have at least 12 flags. I mean, one for every month.
One for every month, yeah. Yeah, I mean, March is St. Patrick's Day, April, Patriots Day if you want, May is Memorial Day, and you go on from there. Kind of like how a lot of guys dress with the pocket squares that accentuate their mood. So maybe we're bringing that to this.
Never been a pocket square person, and now that we've gotten off track, we've ruined what was your great segue. Into
what did I say again?
The Kendrick Perkins is helping the Celtics win, and
he sure is.
And when they have 3 games in a row, Sap, can you believe it?
Right,
the Boston Celtics are winners of 3 straight games. First, they took down. Who the hell have they even beaten during this stretch?
They beat the Knicks by 2.
They took down the almighty Knicks by 2 points. Yep, really, really hard-fought victory there. Then the mighty Minnesota Timberwolves, them of the worst record in the NBA, 13 wins. They did manage to beat them, though it went to overtime, and it got really dicey. They, credit where credit's due, they won the game. And then they got what actually, to me, was their best win of the season, hands down, against Denver yesterday afternoon. In Denver, ending the game on a 40-8 run to beat the Nuggets. And to me, Sap, I don't know where you stand on this. Like I said, it's not even close. That's their best win of the year.
I would think that win, or the win in Milwaukee about a month and a half ago, was an impressive win as well, because it was kind of like wire to wire. This one was shocking because they were down 14 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. And then, as you said, Jet, they go on a 40-8 run, which feels almost like something Gonzaga did in the WCC against like one of the bad teams in that league. You go on a 40-8 run over the final 15 minutes. This is against a really good team.
In the fourth quarter, Sap. 8 points in the fourth quarter.
Against the hottest team in the league. It won 8 in a row and is 17-3 over the last 20. So it wasn't like they were going up against Minnesota or the Knicks or whoever. And it was on the road. First game of a really important 3-game road swing. No, it was an impressive win. The reason I was impressed with it was, first of all, your best player did something that we've been asking him to do for the last couple of years, which is go to the basket and go to the free throw line. In his last 2 games, Jason Tatum has scored 81 points. He's 23 of 24 from the free throw line. He's 6'10", according to Brian Scalabrine, stronger than Karl Malone apparently was in his prime. But true. Still, go to the basket, get your opponent in foul trouble, get some easy shots, get to the free throw line, get confident. When I saw him doing that, I said, well, he's engaged in this game. But more importantly, on the defensive end. And Nikola Jokic is going to be the MVP, and we're going to talk about him later in this episode of our podcast. But they really got into his head late in the third quarter and through the fourth quarter. He also let the referees get into his head. And I think the Celtics got physical with him, with Grant Williams at times, with Tristan Thompson at times, with Marcus Smart at times. And if you remember the Western Conference Finals a year ago, that's what the Lakers did. Dwight Howard was in his head last year in the Western Conference Finals. And Jokic, as great as he is, he doesn't like to be touched. He's almost like a great quarterback that needs a clean pocket. You get physical with him, I think you can kind of take him out of his game. He's still going to be the MVP. His numbers are ridiculous. For most of the first 3 quarters of that game, he really looked like a dad playing with his 4 sons against his
Yes.
4 sons' friends. That's what it looked like. He's just bigger than everybody. His passing is phenomenal. And they also stopped doubling him, which I thought was a really wise move by Brad Stevens.
Yeah, can't double him.
You can't. If he scores 35 points, tip your hat. But you can't have him get 12 to 14 assists in the flow of the game because Denver will destroy you. But nice win. There is a little asterisk with that. Jamal Murray wasn't there. He's their second best player. But still, you know what? Denver's won 8 in a row going into that game, 17 out of the last 20. That is the signature win, along with that game in Milwaukee about a month and a half ago, which was a very impressive win as well.
Yeah, what I thought that made this the most impressive win of the season, and I do think it's absolutely fair to put that Jamal Murray wasn't in the game because he's had big games against the Celtics. I think he had a 49-point game against them a couple of years ago. So, and he is a terrific talent. So you certainly have to look at it that way. And the Celtics didn't have Evan Fournier, and he's the about the same talent level as Jamal Murray, I'd say. Not really.
No.
Just joking, Sap.
I know.
So, take that asterisk aside. Here's why I thought it was the best win of the year for them. You are doing it on the road in Denver, which is a very tough place to play because the altitude is a factor. You're doing it on a Sunday matinee game, which is the Celtics have struggled in mightily this year. And it's a West Coast one, too. So what was a 3:00 Eastern start was actually a 1:00 start in Denver. You know, used to playing 7:30 start time. So it's a big change on the road against a team that was the hottest team in the NBA, a team that's with or without Jamal Murray is a legitimate playoff team, you know, entrenched in the West in the playoffs there. Not, you know, not the Knicks, not a bottom feeder in the playoffs, a legitimate playoff team. And you struggled early in the game, couldn't hit a shot, hung around. And then when the shots started falling, because law of averages, they made their run. And so for all those reasons combined, Sep, that's why I look at it as the best win of the season, is that it was the combined effort of a bunch of different things coming into play, and that you got a star-level performance from Jason Tatum. Like you said, and it took him a little while to get going, but in the second half, he started to really heat up, and which was good to see him not get frustrated. And you didn't get too much from the bench, but you got some nice defensive contributions from the bench. Marcus Smart played within himself that game. Jaylen Brown had a really nice game for himself, too. Robert Williams did a pretty good job when you asked him to do certain things. So I just think overall it was a really good win. But what I was saying, Sap, on my post-game show is that you don't want it to be – you want it to change from the best win of the season to the most impactful win of the season, right? It doesn't mean anything if you just say, hey, on a random Sunday in April, we beat the Denver Nuggets and we played a really good game and we had a lot of intestinal fortitude and hung around and things didn't go necessarily right for us and we still were able to win this game. You want to turn it from that to, hey, here's the method, here's the blueprint, here's what we can be. Take some lessons that you learned from that game and apply them to the last 19, 20 game stretch of this season here. So turn it from your best win of the season to the most impactful win of the season. That's what remains to be seen. And that's where the Celtics have struggled is they've had some games where they've looked good this year, but they haven't turned them into anything meaningful. And so whether this could be a flashpoint or not, I don't think you can say one way or the other because you have to see how the team responds. They haven't shown you that they can really string games together. And now they have the opportunity to do it coming off of a good win, but it's really up to the team to decide, can they take the lessons that they learned from this Denver game and apply them the rest of the way here?
Yeah, because now you go to Portland tomorrow, Thursday at the Lakers, then you come back home. Obviously, the Lakers roster is not what it will be in the playoffs, but the Lakers are coming off a nice win over Brooklyn over the weekend, and the Lakers are going to play defense. That's what they do, even without LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So, yeah, the next two games, do you expect them to win both? Not necessarily, but if you can even split those games, then you've got a winning road trip. And I get what you're saying, Jet. You don't want to, when the season ends, go, Well, we got knocked out in the first round, but remember that game April 11th in Denver? Man, that was fantastic.
Right.
And that's the only thing you can remember in a positive light for the year. The biggest thing is they play defense, something they haven't done this year. That was been their calling card since Brad Stevens has been here. You always could count on the Celtics playing really good defense. Well, that hasn't been the case this year. They're middle of the pack defensively. That's what they have to bring every game. And the other thing, again, I was so impressed with Jason Tatum. He wasn't efficient shooting the ball, but he was then taking it to the basket. And again, you mentioned Kendrick Perkins, who tweeted out, look, young fella, you're making big money. You got to step up. And it's not just about scoring points. He scored 53 against Minnesota on Friday. It was an electric performance. But in some ways, I was more impressed with this. First of all, you're playing a better opponent on the road. Your team is down by 14 late in the third quarter. And that's when you say, you know what? I'm going to the basket. I'm 6'10". I've got a really good handle. I can do this. And it kind of leads me to think that Jason Tatum plays better when he's angry. And maybe he's been angry the last 3 games because of Perkins. And if that's what it takes, it's kind of sad in that sense. But you know what? If it worked, it worked. And if it carries on for a while, good for the Celtics. You would think that a player should be more self-motivated than that a former player who we both love, Kendrick Perkins, because he has no filter and he speaks truth to power, actually went out on Twitter and said, you know, Tatum has to be better than this.
Called him on the phone, he said.
Yeah, so that's perfect, you know, because when I was covering the team, and I don't want to sound like, you know, I was Bob Ryan or anything, but in the 80s, players would react to what people wrote, you know, because they read newspapers. These kids don't read newspapers. You know, they're not listening to talk radio in general. I think Marcus Smart probably listens to podcasts. Wasn't he kind of flipping out about the rafters or whatever the hell the podcast is on CLNS that he was railing against because they called him out that he isn't playing defense at the same level that he's played in the past? So
I saw that Tristan Thompson was mad at Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer.
Right.
They read things. They're not newspapers.
Not newspapers anymore. No one reads newspapers anymore under 50.
I think it's also, they don't necessarily seek it out, but everybody has, you know, their crew now, and they have, you know, the guys in the crew who are, you know, Googling Tristan Thompson, Marcus Smart, and then you report back to their guys.
Well, it's kind of like what Donald Trump did while he was running for president, while he was in the White House. There were people there that would just compile articles, everything else about him, and then he'd react to it. No one does this on their own. That no one has enough time. And
Kevin Durant might.
Kevin Durant probably does. He just goes on Twitter or Instagram and fights with people. So I mean, I think the players respect Perkins. He's a champion. He's a guy who understood what it took to help a team win. He was never an all-star. He was never close to being an all-star, but he was kind of like an offensive lineman. I always considered Kendrick Perkins like the offensive lineman, the unsung hero who did all the dirty work, might score 6 to 8 points, grab 8 to 10 rebounds, protect the rim. But, man, he was going to set picks for all the stars on the team and do all the dirty work. And you need guys like that. I think we saw that in Grant Williams yesterday. Didn't put up really great numbers, but he went toe-to-toe with Jokic for a period of time, and I think it kind of took him out of his game. And I'm not a big Grant Williams fan. I'm still not quite sure what skill set he has, but I think he helped somewhat yesterday. And you need players like that to do those things. He's not there to take 3-pointers and try to score points. He's there to do a lot of the dirty work. So nice win. But like you said, Jet, they got to carry it into the next game and then the following game and make something out of this, because they're still right in the thick of things to be the 4 seed, which would lead you to believe that they can win at least one series. I think that would be a somewhat successful year.
Yeah, they can't survive any other seed.
No, they can't beat Milwaukee, Philadelphia, or Brooklyn in a 7-game series. They can't. So if they're the 4 or the 5, they play Miami, Atlanta, whoever.
They have to avoid Miami too. I'm telling you, Sap. This is what I tweeted out the other day. What the Celtics need is the 4 or the 5 seed, and they need Miami to not be the 4 or the 5 seed.
Right.
They need. That's what they need to win a series. And I think it would be either if they play New York, I think you'd see it'd be a competitive series. I wouldn't bet the house that the Celtics would come out of that series alive.
No, we saw last week the Knicks only lost by 2 at TD Garden. Earlier in the year, they beat the Celtics by 30. Look, the Celtics aren't marginally better than any of these teams. I mean, they may be a little more talented. They've been disappointing this year. But, yeah, if they play Atlanta, the Knicks, Charlotte, I think they can win that series. It'll probably be a 6 or 7-game series. But they're all kind of jumbled in between 4 and 9 in the Eastern Conference. 4 right now is Atlanta. at 29-25. Indiana, 25-27, is only 3 games back, and they're in the 9 slot. So
Yeah.
you obviously want to avoid 7, 8, 9, 10, so you don't have to play in that play-in. And then you do want to avoid Miami. Miami's a better team than the Celtics, and also a bad matchup for the Celtics. But we're trying to draw an inside straight flush at that point. Like, we want to be the 4 or 5 seed, but we don't want to play Miami either. So it's like, okay, what is exactly going to happen over the final month and a half of the season?
No, that's why I've been saying for months now, Sap, that they think they're going to lose in the first round, because I'm not gonna think that all the correct confluence of events are going to happen to the Celtics, where they are able to get the seed that they want and avoid the team that they don't want to play in that round. It's some luck. I know their logo is a leprechaun and a clover, but you don't get that lucky typically where everything works out the way you want it to. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's a good win, and if they build on it and take some of the lessons that they learned, then maybe you feel a little bit differently when the playoffs start about where they could be and what they look like. But as of right now, all it is just a nice win on a Sunday in April.
Yep.
So we'll see, and we'll see if Jason Tatum can keep up the pace that he's been on, because he's on a little bit of a tear here, and you'd like to see him get angry. And like you said, he does seem to play better when he's angry, Sap. And maybe it was the officiating, because the officiating bothered both teams. It was horrible. The refs were terrible, but that's the NBA. The refs are rarely are you going to give a shining review of the officials at the end of a game.
No, you only mention them when they suck, which is generally pretty much every game. If they do a good job, we never mention them. And yeah, no, I think Tatum might be one of those players that when angry plays better, because now he takes the ball to the basket and is more aggressive. I've always felt LeBron James plays better angry. I mean, when Draymond Green kicked him in the nuts in game 4 of the finals, from that point on, he played his best 3-game stretch ever, considering what was at stake.
Right.
Sometimes leave a sleeping giant alone. Not that Tatum's at the level of LeBron, but you could see that he was much more aggressive. I'm not looking necessarily for shooting percentages. I think on Sunday it was 9 for 23. That's not great, but going to the basket, especially in crunch time, that's what he should do.
Yeah, and it was more that it was a cold start, and then if you look at the second half, the shooting percentages were much better. And speaking to that 53-point performance he had, becoming the third all-time single game score for the Celtics, and to Larry Bird, I think, has the other 2 marks there. It showed how talented he is.
Oh, of course.
But he did the right thing. He went to the free throw line 16 times.
Yep.
He was 15 of 16 from the free throw line, and I've said this many times. That's where good scorers become great scorers, is you get to the free throw line. That's why James Harden puts up 30 points all the time, because he gets to the free throw line an insane amount of times. So, and you see, Tatum can do that. He could be a guy that puts up 50 many more times in his career if he just does the right things, because he's got the skill to do it.
Let me make this prediction.
It's not Tony Delk where he has one 50-point game.
No. He's obviously an elite player, an elite scorer. I think that at some point in his career with the Celtics, and I think he's going to be here a while, maybe in 3 or 4 years, he requests a trade because the team is continually fighting for the 4 and 5 seed, and he wants to go and join friends and be a champion. But at some point in his Celtics career, he will set the Celtics single game scoring record. Right now, it's Larry Bird with 60. I do think that Jason Tatum at some point will go beyond 60, because the way the game is now, with the importance of 3-point shooting, he's going to have a game where he goes 9 for 13 from 3, gets to the line 8 to 10 times, and just has a lights out game. He only took 25 shots and getting 53 points on Friday. That's impressive. If he wants to be even more of a volume scorer, he'll break that record at some point. Maybe not this year, but within the next several.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening, like you said, because the importance of the 3-pointer and how skilled he is in a variety of ways offensively. I could totally see him putting up over 60 points in a game. It's just he's going to have to get to the free throw line in that type of game, and that's exactly what he did when he put up his 53 the other night. And you could see how happy it made him and excited. He's tweeting about it after the game. He's posting up pictures of the the historic mark for him. So I see I think he has the desire to get those accolades and to carve his name in Celtics history. It's just some games he looks like he would rather be doing something else. But when he doesn't, he's one of the most dangerous scorers in the league. So it's nice to see him have this nice little stretch right now. Whether it will continue or not, it's anybody's guess. History this season would say that he's going to take a couple of games off mentally, but maybe they've found something here. We'll have to see. We'll move on to the other team that's looking for their 18th banner, Sap, your Los Angeles Lakers, who have been without your guy LeBron and his Robin AD for a little while now. It still looks like LeBron's around 2 weeks or so away from coming back. Mm-hmm. Anthony Davis maybe around the same, a little longer potentially. But they've been they held their own against the NBA title favorites the other day when they played the Brooklyn Nets, getting a nice win for themselves, 126-101. So actually, it was more than a nice win for themselves; it was a blowout win. Obviously, just like on the Lakers side, Sap, there is asterisks on the Nets side. Kyrie Irving ejected, as was Dennis Schroeder. Kevin Durant, 24 minutes, still not at 100%, and no James Harden in that game. So not really a finals preview by any stretch, I would say, but certainly a nice win for the Lakers to make them feel good about themselves because they've been playing, I'd say, mediocre to poorly without their two best players.
Yeah, they're 5-8 without LeBron and AD. So, at that pace, they could be in danger of falling to the 6 or even more so the 7 seed, which I want them to avoid. But they're playing solid defensively. And LeBron and Anthony Davis are elite defensive players. And because your two best players are elite defensive players, they set the tone. So it kind of trickles down to the rest of the roster. Andre Drummond has surprised me at times with his defense. I mean, again, I can't say that I saw a lot of Andre Drummond games in Detroit. They made the playoffs twice as an 8 seed, and he's 0-8 in the postseason. I think he'll be different this year because he's now the third or fourth best player. I would think he'll get a win, if not 16. But defensively, they still bring it every night. And Frank Vogel's a good defensive coach, so that's in their DNA. That's why they won the title last year. It was more about defense than offense. So they still bring that, and they're a physical team. Drummond was a physical presence against Brooklyn on Saturday night. And, we saw Kyrie have a magical first half, which he wanted to do. And then he gets ejected with Dennis Schroeder. And, obviously, if you're a Laker fan, you take that exchange every day of the week. I mean, Schroeder's a really good player. Kyrie is otherworldly. And then Durant seemed like he checked out at that point, which he oftentimes does. And they didn't have Harden. And obviously ABC was like, man, we've got, Brooklyn, LA, the two biggest markets, all these stars. And the second half was essentially Kevin Durant against some unknown guys on the Lakers.
The game meant much more to the Lakers than to the Nets.
Absolutely. Because now at least it puts some doubt in Brooklyn's mind that, they're going to bring it. I don't know about Brooklyn's defense. And I still think that you need to have defense to win a championship. I'm not saying Brooklyn has to be the bad boy Pistons or the Bulls in the 90s, but they've got to be somewhere middle of the pack defensively, and they can carry that into, the finals and maybe win the championship. I know the Lakers are going to play defense, especially when LeBron and AD come back. So if this happens that these two teams meet in the finals, I think the Lakers would still be the favorite because they're the defending champ and they also play defense, something that Brooklyn, we don't know about yet, what they do. And also Kyrie, he's the wild card in all of this. He could retire and join the circus by July, and it wouldn't surprise me. Seriously, I've said this a million times. He's the most unreliable, great player in the league. Physically, he breaks down from time to time.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that.
Sometimes he's somewhere else. I mean, I've compared him to Odell Beckham Jr. forever. And they're both phenomenal players. Love watching them. I mean, why wouldn't you? They're all-time great talents. But I don't know what their commitment is to the sport and if they're more interested in other things besides basketball and football. So he's the wild card in this. I mean, if his mind's in the right direction, look out because he's that good. But I think it's still a big question.
Yeah, the Lakers got 20 and 11 from Andre Drummond in 22 minutes in that game, Sap. So he was the leading scorer for LA. All their scores finished in in double digits. Even Schroeder, who did get ejected, he had 19 points in just 20 minutes. So very efficient scoring the ball, and they put up 126. Yeah, the Nets defense isn't anything to write home about, but they didn't build their team to be a defensive powerhouse. So I don't think you can read anything into this game as a finals preview. And these are the two teams I do expect to be there at the end, unfortunately. But this is not at all what the game will look like in my mind. But like I said, it meant a lot more to the Lakers than to the Nets. And the Lakers sort of needed to stem that tide of losing to avoid having to have LeBron and AD have to come back and really just like dig them out of a huge hole. Certainly a good win, but the story ended up not being the win so much, Sap, as the dual ejections from Dennis Schroeder and Kyrie Irving. Something that later seemed to be revealed from Kyrie, not directly but indirectly, as he often does. He likes to be passive aggressive. That's his style. It seemed like he was upset with Dennis Schroeder's use of the N-word. Kyrie had not that long. Sorry. He had a post on his Twitter, Instagram. I forget which one.
It was Twitter.
On Twitter. I'll read it for you real quick. I can say it, fortunately, because he didn't actually type the word. The N-word is a derogatory racial slur. It will never be a term of endearment, reclaimed, flipped. Never forget its foul and true history. Throw that N-word out the window right alongside all those other racist words used to describe my people. We are not slaves or ends. So that seemed to be in direct opposition to what happened with him and Dennis Schroeder on the court the other day, and somebody slowed down them going at it, and it did seem like Dennis Schroeder used the N-word, which he's black. Neither of us are black, Sap, and if you're watching on YouTube, can be confirmed for you. We're very white. And me, in fact, I'm so white that I blended. I had to put more pictures of my background so I didn't blend right into the wall like a chameleon. It's tricky, and so we can't talk about it from really any sort of expertise standpoint, Sap. But I have several black friends. I'm not trying to be Donald Trump here. I've been friends with black people in my life that actually, and some of them do use the N-word. Some of them don't use the N-word. It seems like it's completely a personal choice and colloquialism, depending on how you feel about it. The issue with Kyrie, and again, I can't really speak on this from an area of expertise, is that he's making a definitive statement one way or another that I'm sure plenty of people agree with, but there's also just as many people, if not more, who disagree with it in the black community. So the problem I have with it is that the same problem I have with Kyrie for a lot of things, and I'll see what you have to say here in a second, Sap. It's that he always feels like he knows best. He's in the right. What he says is law, and you should listen to him because he's the most intelligent person in the room, and he's coming at it from a perspective that nobody else could possibly comprehend. And so listen to what Kyrie says because what he's saying is right. And I don't like that attitude in any person, let alone somebody who tried to, implode the Celtics. And so I have a personal vendetta against the guy. This is off-putting to me because Dennis Schroeder, as a fellow black person, I don't care that he's from Germany, has the right to say the N-word if he wants to say the N-word without Kyrie shaming him for doing it.
Yeah, it's a debate in the black community because I think some of the older people that went through so much distress, decades ago in the South or really wherever they lived, don't like to hear that word, and they've pushed back against it in the hip hop community and don't want it really uttered. Now, there's two fashions of the word, right? The one that ends in ER and the one that ends in A. The one that ends in A is considered somewhat of an acceptance, a word that means acceptance. I wouldn't say that it is a word of endearment necessarily, because it can also be used to maybe make in an argumentative way as well. So It is a complicated issue, and
very complicated.
We're not really the best people to talk about it, but we're doing a podcast, so we talk about it. And Kyrie is the boy who cried wolf, right? Because it just seems like if this was coming from a different player, the conversation would be a little bit deeper. I also think that Kyrie is someone who, and I don't know if it's authentic or not, he's going through this awakening about his culture. And he also talks about his Native American culture. I believe his mother was Native American. So he's learning about that. So I can respect the man that's trying to learn about who he is and where he comes from. But again, the holier than thou attitude sometimes is off-putting, and that's what you get with Kyrie. It's kind of that Duke mentality of, I went to the Harvard of the South, so you got to listen to me. Who the hell are you? You're from Germany. And I'm sure Dennis Schroeder's dealt with racism in Germany. It's not a hell of a lot better in Europe than it is in the United States. Not a lot of black
people in Germany.
No, and I don't think they're readily accepted. Same thing in Italy. More so in England because there's a larger black community in England.
France, there's a major issue in France.
Absolutely. So they have issues there. So don't just push back Dennis Schroeder because he's German African or whatever you want to call him.
I would respect it more if he said, instead of saying, I don't think it should ever be said, I acknowledge its history and its value.
Right.
But he's just making statements saying it should never be said by anybody, period. Well, that's your opinion. There's millions of black people who feel differently and use it every day and have no problem with it from a black person to another black person. In fact, when I lived with the football team at Oregon, I was one of the only white guys there. They would obviously I would never use that word in a million ever for no reason, but they would say it to me.
Right.
Because to them, it's a term of endearment to some people.
Or acceptance, okay? You're with us. You're with us. We love you. We consider you one of ours, right? I mean, it's like, look, I'm Italian-American, so Guinea is a word that gets thrown around, so I don't use it. I probably have in the past. I try to clean it up, but that doesn't mean I have to disparage any Italian that uses it. And again, it sometimes can be a term of endearment. You're Jewish. The K word to me is right alongside the N word. Is two words that I find reprehensible. I don't think that the K word gets thrown around in the
no
Jewish
one really
community.
Uses it.
No one uses that. So, and I can see where Kyrie in this situation is saying we're not helping ourselves by using this word. But again, because it's Kyrie Irving, it comes across as holier than thou and a know-it-all, which is always a turnoff.
Well, and I think the big reason, Sap, that it became part of modern culture is because there was that movement to take it back and make its meaning less painful. And the gay community has done something similar with the F word too. That they've tried, and queer certainly is something that they've tried to take back, and I think successfully have reclaimed for themselves. So it's it's complicated, and us being neither black nor gay can really speak to how they feel about it. But I just don't like declarative statements one way or the other. I'd feel the same way if Dennis Schroeder said, we should all say it. Everybody should say it. It's our word now. That's Kyrie or Dennis Schroeder's own opinion. And to make it seem like your opinion is the only valid one, I just don't like that. I'm trying to remove my personal bias against Kyrie. And I feel like I would have this opinion if anybody made just a broad statement like that. It's not Kyrie's right to say what other people are allowed or not allowed to feel about a certain word or say it. We all know if you're not black, you can't say it in a way that's not inherently racist or derogatory.
R or A do not work for a white person.
But if you are black, I think you have the right to make that determination for yourself without Kyrie Irving making you feel bad or telling you you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, without question. And again, is Kyrie the PC police at this point? And, again, if he's supposed to be in a leadership position, did it help him getting ejected from that game? Because when he got ejected, the Nets were only down 4. And again, in the grand scheme of things, if and when these two teams meet in the finals, that game's not going to mean a heck of a lot unless somehow it determines who has home court advantage. And even then, the Lakers can win in Brooklyn and Brooklyn can win in LA. That's exactly what happened this regular season. It's just a matter of which team is healthier and playing their best ball that's going to determine who wins the NBA Finals and how the stars play. So, yeah, I mean, it's Kyrie's a lightning rod. And you know what? Again, this is what makes the NBA so fascinating because it is a discussion, right? And we can talk about this and you can have, no pun intended, different shades of gray. So, you don't really get this in other leagues, really. In football, not so much. Again, because it's just a different community than it is in any other sport, and that's what makes the NBA so fascinating. I can see where Kyrie's coming from, but I agree. Declarative statements are a turnoff. It's almost like end of discussion. I've tabled it. Well, who are you?
Yeah, and that sort of speaks to, I think, a lot of the reasons that Kyrie has turned off a lot of people in the NBA is because he has that attitude of, I know better than you, and I don't care who knows it. I'm going to let everybody know I know better than you. And I think to some teammates that's a turn off, certainly to large swaths of fans. Mm-hmm. So, but he's not going to change, and I'll give him credit for that. At least he speaks his mind, and I appreciate that. Yep. He doesn't turtle away from anything, which I think is a good thing. You also, if you're going to speak your mind and be opinionated, you have to be okay with other people disagreeing with you. And exactly. I think that's where he's run into some issues, is has not been so okay with that in the past, and he gets really upset with it. By the way, before we finish this discussion, I do want to say how much I love Dennis Schroeder, and that everybody else seems to hate him. Where he's gotten into issues with so many point guards in the NBA, he's such an irritant. Like, I remember him and Rondo got into it. I think him and Westbrook have gotten into it too. He's such a dick. I love it.
When he first showed up in the league, Bill Simmons called him German Rondo. I mean, the game is very similar.
He's awesome.
He is. He's one of those sandpaper guys. So the Lakers didn't re-sign didn't re-sign Rondo, which I wanted them to do. They got a reasonable facsimile of, who just happened to be younger and healthier. I don't know how he's going to play in the postseason. We're really having that opportunity, but he seems like a guy that's not afraid of the big moments. I mean, like you said, he had a big game Saturday night. He and Kyrie were kind of going,
he's such a dick, right? Which is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, whereas Kyrie's much more passive aggressive.
No, he gets into people's heads.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think he's going to be a major player in the postseason. I mean, you can make a case. Well, now with Drummond, you can make a case that he's the Lakers' fourth best player, which shows you that they're a pretty damn team. I
think Schroeder's better than Drummond, honestly. I do.
Well, again, his game translates better to the modern NBA because he's a pretty decent three-point shooter, and Drummond is more the old school, stay-at-home big center. But in that game Saturday, I was so impressed with Drummond. The Nets have nobody to defend the post, and that's going to be an issue against either Milwaukee and or Philadelphia in the Eastern Conference, and it will be an issue against the Lakers in the finals. The Nets had better be clicking on all cylinders offensively, which they probably will, but they have no post defense. When Golden State was winning titles, they could defend the post because Draymond could do it, and they also had JaVale McGee, who played a nice role for Golden State in two of those championships, and Bogut earlier. So they had post defenders. DeAndre Jordan looks calcified at this point. He doesn't get off the bench.
Yeah, they were even talking about potentially buying him out, but I think he's got a close relationship with Durant and Kyrie. He does. So that's not happening. They want to get him a ring for doing nothing, which is, that's nice. When you become that veteran who, just sits on the bench and collects paychecks and can earn a ring, it's not a bad way to end your career.
No,
so
I'll take
DeAndre Jordan could be in a far worse place. Sap, I am making the executive decision. We're going to wrap up this show.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Nikola Jokic in the next podcast, in addition to a new owner for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he has no ties to Minnesota or basketball, but he's still buying the Timberwolves. We'll get into who that is in the next show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. That will be dropping on Tuesday. For John Sapichetti, I'm Jet Stryer. This has been the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out fullpresscoverage.com for this and other great podcasts. And make sure you check out youtube.com/Jet Stryer, JETSTRIAR, for the video version of this podcast, which includes John Sapichetti's beautiful artistic tapestry behind him. So we will see you on Tuesday, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy some basketball tonight. See ya.